I had a couple of frights actually today, and panics really. One was not being able to find the right entrance to Fenchurch Street Station on my way here this evening. But the other was, this morning, I managed to get stung in the face by one of my own bees.
Oh,
and my first thought was, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I can't go to Rainham Library with a face like a balloon. What happened was, I've got a whole load of stuff down at the bottom of my garden next to the shed where I keep all my beekeeping material. And when you process, any beekeepers here? Okay, you'll know, when you process honey, you have sort of leftovers, don't you? You have what we call wet frames, where there's honey left on the frames that the bees have been working on, and you have bits of wax and lumps of honey and all kinds of other stuff. So you can't process that, so I give it back to the bees. And I've had a lot of it over the past few weeks, quite a lot of it, and big piles of wax and honey and some brown crud called slum gum, which is anything that isn't useful in the hive. Anyway, put it down at the bottom of the garden, and the bees from all the local hives go and race in. It's as if it's a giant car boot sale where everything's free. I mean, there are thousands of bees whizzing in and out all the time. And that's fine. But they do travel quite fast. So anyway, what I like to do is I come back from work, still in my suit, and if the sun's shining, I like to go down the bottom of the garden and see how they are. And it's kind of weird because you're standing next to all these bees who are zooming in and out, and there's thousands of them, and they are perfectly placid with you because they'll come up and they'll zoom straight past you and stop and sniff you quickly and say, oh, you don't smell the honey, I'm not going to bother with you, and then they carry on. And it's fascinating. I love to do it. It's sort of living slightly dangerously, so that's great. So I did that this morning, and then I thought, I had this mad rush of blood to the head. And I went over to the hive that I keep there at the bottom of the garden as well, and I thought, I'll just check how they are. Didn't have a veil on or anything, and I lifted off the roof, but I knew there was a protective crown board in the way, which is glass, and you can see through the glass into where the bees are to check that they're okay. So that was fine, except that then I noticed under the crown board, because it was glass, there'd been some rain recently, there were some drops of condensation. Now damp is a killer for bees. Cold is absolutely fine. You can be as cold as you like in the winter, that's okay. But damp will kill a bee very quickly. So I thought, well, I've got to get rid of those drops of condensation. So I lifted off the crown board in my suit and started letting the drops run away. And naturally, one or two bees inside didn't take very kindly to that. Imagine someone takes the roof off your house. A giant elephant does. You know, you go, well, hang on a second, which is what they did. And one came up, said, who the hell are you? And smacked me with a sting right on the bridge of the nose. Now, that was actually the right place for it to happen, because an inch to either side, right, and I would have come in, you know, with a head like a cabbage. But fortunately, it was here, so it was on the bone, nowhere really for it to get its sting in properly. So I survived, and you've been spared the sight of looking at somebody pretty ugly, well, even uglier than me, for the rest of the evening. See, 10 years of keeping bees, and I'm still making terrible mistakes, which is why the title of my book is The Bad Beekepers Club, you see. It's not a manual of beekeeping. It doesn't teach you what to do when keeping bees. It tells you what not to do when keeping bees. And it's not for beekeepers specifically. It's a guide, a humorous guide, if you like, to the wonderful world of beekeeping and the various stories I've had associated with it. Because I get asked lots of questions about what it's like and how it all works. And for me, it started a long time ago, about 18 years ago, thanks to a retired Hell's Angel called Richard and a chicken called Tabasco. Not at the same time. But it was a day like today, about 18 years ago, when Richard, who had been my next door neighbour, was a builder and was doing some work on the house that I now live in. And he's a really tough guy, you know, former biker, didn't take any nonsense, hunting, shooting, fishing kind of guy, was scared of nothing. And one day, though, he came running into the house from doing his work and was spooked like a stallion that had been frightened by something. And I thought, right, that's really not like him. And I looked out the window to see what it was, and there was a vast cloud of swirling bees, tens of thousands of them working their way across the garden, and it was a swarm. And eventually, they settled on a tree at the bottom of the garden, about 10 yards from where I got stung this morning. And we did what all right-minded citizens do when a swarm lands in your garden. We called the police. And the police sent along somebody from the local Beekeepers Association, who very calmly came with a cardboard box and a pair of secateurs and snipped off the branch from which the bees were hanging and lowered them gently into the box. And when they'd all settled, he folded it up, carried them away. And I said, that is a really cool thing to be able to do. Have I got the Zen-like calm? Have I got the communion with nature to be able to live with the bees and communicate with them and manipulate them and love them and be loved by them? And 18 years later, I'm still looking for the answer to that question. But time went by, I didn't do anything about it, and I became a foreign correspondent for the BBC and went to live in Washington for a number of years and came back and still had nothing to do with bees. But when we came back, I did start keeping chickens. Anybody here keep chickens? Same lady. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we had 3 chickens, and I made a terrible mistake of giving them all names. To give your chickens names, you shouldn't do it, should you? Because the day comes when you have to do something to one of those chickens, and it's not nice if they've got a name. I know it's nature red in tooth and claw. But anyway, one of these chickens, they produced wonderful eggs. They were called Agatha, Sally, who became known as Fat Sally when she stopped laying eggs, and Tabasco. And they were wonderful hens. And then one day, Tabasco fell ill. So we took her to the vet. And I was with my daughter, Flora, who was about 10 at the time, and Tabasco in a cardboard box and me in the vet's waiting room. And Flora looked around the room. She said, Dad, look, there's a sign on the wall. It says beekeeping lessons. And I said, that is not a sign. That is not any old sign. That is the sign. That is meant to be, as if there's a light shining and the Hollywood choir is going, oh, because I knew that was the moment I was going to start to become a beekeeper. Anyway, took Tabasco in to see the vet, and it wasn't very good. And she had some form of peritonitis, and sadly, she is now in the great chicken coop in the sky, or whatever it was. But because of Tabasco, I always think, we are all here together tonight. And I always like to take a moment and say, thank her for everything she's done, for bringing us all together. Thank you very much, Tabasco. Anyway, so I signed up then for lessons with the Pinner and Ruislip Beekeepers Association. Even though they were 10 miles from where I live, they were the people who'd put the sign up. And they taught me the basics. They say before you can go anywhere near some live bees, you have to do a preliminary course so that you understand what it's all about. And they teach you about how the hive works, where the bees live, and how to knock together the frames that are all important in a beehive. It's literally a sort of pine wood frame with a sheet of wax foundation in it. And the bees go on that foundation and chew out hexagonal cells, hundreds of them. And into those cells they put honey and pollen, and the queen lays her eggs. And that is how they live. And the first lesson they teach you when you sign up for beekeeping lessons is you will get stung. A lesson I have learned many, many times since then. And then eventually they let you out with some live bees. And my first day out with some live bees was possibly a little bit more complicated than with others, as I can read to you now from the book. When they teach you the first principles of apiculture, there's a second very important rule most beekeepers will impress upon you soon after the first one, which is you will get stung. It's this: make sure yours is the only body inside the bee suit. Sounds obvious, I know. To be honest, there's not an awful lot of room for anybody else inside one. So on most occasions, you don't have to worry. Every so often, though, a bee is going to try to get in there, and then things can get awkward. Still, it's quite rare, and if you take the right precautions, it should never happen to you. Of course, there's an exception to every rule. And on this particular day, my suit did have an unwelcome visitor, and it wasn't just the guy tripping over his trousers in the car park. I was writhing, wriggling, and beginning to rather reconsider the whole project, but I determined to carry on. I've just realised I've forgotten to tell you a whole part of the story. It's the sting on my nose that's taking my attention away. So, first day out with the live bees, I go off to the apiary, and there are 2 blokes there who are showing me how it's all going to work. And I got there a little bit late because I'd been working that morning. And they already had the hive open. I said, hello, I'm Bill Turnbull. I'm here to see the bees. And they said, yep, that's fine. There is a suit in that van you're standing by. Put that on. And by the way, watch out for the swarm of bees that is on the concrete post the other side of the van. And I looked and said, okay, swarm of bees there. I'm here, van there. Okay. Picked the suit up and walked up the lane into the shade to put it on. Now, the thing was, with any swarm of bees, there's always a few outriders, scouts, who are looking for somewhere better to go. And 2 of them followed me. I think they kind of liked the smell of my hair because I still had some gunk on it from working in the studio. And they were buzzing around the back of my head because you have glands here which emanate a scent as well. So they were doing that, and I forgot the golden rule, which is never swat a bee. However hard you swat. Do that, it can see you coming a mile off because they see things in sort of stop frame motion. They've got very good eyesight like that. So anyway, one of them landed on my head and got stuck on the hair, and I tried to bat it away and it stung me. And another one did the same, it stung me again. So before I've even got the suit on, I've been stung twice on the head. Quite an important detail, and I'm very sorry I forgot to give it to you earlier. Has anybody here been stung on the head before? The lady with the it's like being hit on the head with a shovel, isn't it, really? Okay. All right, so we're back to this thing. Okay. Got there in the end. This is what happens when you get out of bed at 4:45 in the morning, ladies and gentlemen. Your brain by this time of day is just gone completely to mush. Anyway, I determined to carry on. Having stepped into the trousers, I pulled the top over my shoulders and reached back for the veil. It comes over the top of the head like a hinged helmet and zips around either side of the neck for a secure, supposedly bee-free fastening. My head was throbbing like an anvil, but I was at last ready to enter the apiary. The 2 bees that had stung me had disappeared and were presumably dead. But now a third one appeared on my veil. It was quite calm, taking its time, walking around a bit and then stopping right in front of my eyes. I thought it was odd to have a bee for such close company, but then I focused on it more closely and analysed the situation. If that bee was on the outside of my veil, I should have been able to see its belly. So why then could I only see its back? Oh. Like a child being taught its first lesson in arithmetic, I came to the correct conclusion slowly and after some prompting. So why has little Miss B got her back to us? That's right, darling, it's because she's inside the veil. Now, there's getting stung on the head, which is not nice, and there's getting stung on the face, which is a whole lot not nicer. Severe facial blemishes are not a great asset for a television presenter, and at that moment my whole career did not so much flash before my eyes as simply vanish. I could see the headline: TV newsman hideously disfigured in rampaging bee attack. Sting on tongue rules out radio as well. So I did what so many characters in thrillers do in tense circumstances. I froze. You can do a lot of thinking when you freeze. Uh-oh, there's a bee in my veil. Okay, don't panic. There's just a bee inside the veil. Oh my God, there's a bee in my veil. What am I going to do? Salvation, in the form of Christopher, my bee mentor, one of the guys in the apiary there, was just a few yards away. All I had to do was walk over there very slowly and get his help. If I'd had a stick of nitroglycerine balanced on my head, I could not have stepped more carefully. It was just a few yards, but it felt like one of the longest walks of my life, played out to a disconcertingly loud soundtrack of buzzing. I must have looked rather strange, inching my way forward like an astronaut taking his first steps on the moon. But at last I made it through the gate and presented myself. Hello, I'm Bill Turnbull, and I'm here to learn about beekeeping from you. There's a bee inside my veil. Rather like John Wayne, Christopher stepped forward and reached out a gloved hand, found the intruder still perched a centimetre from my nose, and pinched it. I almost expected him to drawl, "The hell you say." But of course he didn't, even when I added my pathetic punchline. And I've just been stung on the head. Twice. Now, you might expect, in those circumstances, that many normal people would have said, you know what? Beekeeping, not really for me, not my thing, not meant to happen. But I said, no. I've taken the lessons. These guys have come here to show me how it's all going to work. I've spent all this time getting here. I'm jolly well going to carry on. And that has basically been my motto ever since. And it's been hugely rewarding.